If you've watched some of my videos, you've probably heard me say it can get pretty chilly here in the shop, and it can. Now, part of it's a self-imposed issue, which is I've got an exhaust fan here in the window, and that lets a lot of cold air come through. But it's been a really cold winter south of Boston. So I needed to come up with a solution to try and cut down the cool air that's seeping in and the heater doesn't go on as much. And my solution was I came up with an interior storm window. So I've made it out of scrap. It's a great DIY project. And I can already tell that there's not a lot of cold air blowing through. And it's a simple construction method, so stick around. I'll show you how I did this quick DIY project to kind of tame the coldness in my shop. So the first thing I needed to decide was how big were these windows going to be? I wanted the rails and stiles to be 2 inches wide. And when I measured the windows themselves, then I wanted my actual interior storm windows to be 18 3/4 inches high by 33 7/8 inches wide. And then I would have a glass insert of 15 3/4 by 30 7/8. And that's because I was going to put a 1/2 inch rabbet all the way around the inside of those frames. So once I brought them over to the table saw and cut them all to length, I did that off camera. I then brought them over to the router table, and on the stiles, I cut a full 1/2 inch rabbet right down the length of those stiles. And that was easy enough to do. But when it came to the rails, I needed to create a stop rabbet because I didn't want it to have a hole showing on the end of the frame. So I was decided to take it off in little bites. You can see I put a piece of pegboard up against my router table fence in order to build it out. And I gently put the piece into the router and then pulled it back just before I reached the end, and then repeated that process. Turned the router off, removed my piece of pegboard, and then went through and did my final cut with the router on my stop rabbet. But that's not the end of it, because once you make that stop rabbet, your rabbet cuts are going to be rounded. So once this was done, I brought them over to the bench, and then using a chisel, I then squared up each of the ends with a nice fine cut. And then once I did that to all 4 ends of my stop routers, I then can begin the joinery. And I've chosen to use pocket holes in order to do this because it's a quick, simple shop project, so it doesn't have to be too fancy. So I finished cleaning up all my corners here. I definitely need to sharpen my chisels. I can tell by looking at this video that that chisel needed to be sharpened a little bit, but it did the job. So then we're going to go through and we're going to drill out the holes for the pocket screws. And I had to be careful with the alignments that I didn't put the pocket screws through where the rabbet was. So carefully putting that through, I did all 4 ends of those stiles and then brought them over to the bench using a corner clamp. And I put a piece of MDF on my bench because I know that's going to be nice and flat. Tap it in place, and then I'm able to join all 4 of the corners of this frame together. And this is going together pretty well. It's actually better than I had hoped. And I actually ordered some acrylic glass for these from a local shop, and I'll post a link in the video because they do ship anywhere in the United States, and the pricing was phenomenal. The service was phenomenal as well. But I'll put a link to it in my description, as well as hopefully put one in this video as well. Because if you need cut pieces of acrylic, this is the place to go. And they did a great job with a very quick turnaround time. So with the frame in place, I then took my acrylic sheet and peeled back the plastic sheathing just to make sure that it was going to fit perfectly, and it did. So my rabbets are a little bit bigger than the size of the glass, so there's a little bit of wiggle room in there so it would just drop right in. So I peeled off that protective layer of glass, it dropped right in, and I purchased online through Amazon just window clips. I was going to use those in order to hold this glass in place. And my design process thought this would work absolutely great. And it did. It held the glass in place perfectly. But one of the things you're probably asking is, how am I going to hang these in the windows? Well, because these are basement windows and they're steel framed, what I chose to do was, again, through Amazon. I purchased some magnets, and I'm going to fasten a little bit later in the video. You'll see me fastening the magnets to the sides of the window frames. And it's with double-sided tape that came with the magnets themselves, and it appeared to work perfectly. But one of my miscalculations is that the thickness of the magnet, along with the thickness of the tape, was equal to the clips. So therefore, there wasn't enough room for the magnet to actually adhere to the window frame itself. So I didn't realize this until trial and error, but I went through and I put all the magnets in, did a test fit to see if it was going to work, and it didn't work perfectly. But I went through and I figured the best solution for this would be that I would then drill out a slight recess in the back of the frame itself to drop those clips down just a little bit, and then chisel that out. And then off camera, I reattached the clips, put the glass back in, reattached the clips, and then hung the window frame up into the window. And so far, it has worked really well. It has cut down some of the coldness that's coming through. It's not 100% perfect, but it's a basement shop, and they're cold steel windows. So anything I do to reduce the amount of draft that's coming through definitely works to my advantage. So hopefully this is helpful for you, that you can use it in your shop, especially if you're working in a basement shop. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. And hopefully I was able to share some knowledge with you in the process. And if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing to A.G. Johnson & Son Furniture Restoration, where we do mostly customer projects, but once in a while we have to do a shop project as well too. So click below if you have any questions or comments. Thanks again for watching.